Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to revisit the backdoor in Python and make it a virus. We're going to add some functionalities to it and I'm going to show you how everything of that works. It is going to be relatively simple and all you have to do is just follow up. It's just a bunch of functions. If you don't like some of them, you can just leave them out. Keep in mind that I didn't do this in object programming because I am too lazy to do that. Let's get into it. I'm going to open up my file here. Now for testing this virus, I definitely recommend a listener of sorts. I have netcat installed right here. So you can use that, for example, or you can just use a different machine or a virtual machine or something like that. So let's just edit the code and let's take a look at what we have right here. So first thing what we have here is a bunch of default modules that you do not have to install. Then we have the function shell, and then we have the function destroyer, and then we have the function wormy, and then scheduler, and then lastly replicator. And right here we can call them. Now I'm calling only the shell because shell calls the other ones, and these are some commands that you can use and everything explained. So let's get back here and let's first explain the shell. So first we're printing the attempting connection to the hacker waiting. Now obviously we would remove every print as I said in the previous video because you don't want that to be visible. This is going to be run on the victim's machine and the hacker is going to be the listener that I talked about. So in my case netcat. So we're trying to run this and if it fails we have some exceptions here. For example, we have the connection refused error. If the connection is refused, it's just going to reattempt that again. It's just going to call shell again. And if it times out, it's going to do the same thing and it's going to call shell again. And then if we have the connection reset error, this basically means that the hacker closed the connection. So it's going to call the shell again, as I said, but this time hacker closed the connection. Now you can make this not call the shell again. It's up to you. You can just comment out this part. Now let's get back and explain the function. So first what we're defining is our host. In my case, it's 104. As I said, you can check this by pressing the Windows key and R, writing cmd, and then going ipconfig. And right here on the IPv4 address, you can see your IP, or you can use your external IP. This allows me to easily listen to the incoming connections and run the backdoor at the same time. And then we have the R port, which is the port that we're going to listen to. This can be any port. Make sure that it's just not taken. So it can be 1337, whatever you prefer, 3434, or whatever you want. Now we're making the sock variable global. Now object programming will go great here, but of course, as I said, I'm too lazy to do it in object programming. And plus, to be honest, I never thought much of this, and then I just built upon it with a lot of functions. Okay, so then we have the sock is socket.socket, AF, INET, and sockstream. In the last video, I actually said that this is just a connection thing that you need to define in order to connect to the R host, which is this, and the R port, which is this. So that's how we connect to our hacker. And then we have the print hooking onto the R host and the R port. So we're just printing this out, you don't need this. And then we have the deadly combination, while true and try. But it is here because try, if we accept right here, exception is E, we can print out what the exception might be. In other words, if this something here fails, it's going to let us know. Mostly it's going to be something with the sending of the command or processing it through the PowerShell. And then right here we have the header that is going to be sent to the hacker that he's going to see with the start of every entry he makes for a command. So we're going to send the header and encode it into bytes because it has to be bytes in order to be transferred with our socket. And then we're going to make a variable cmd, which is going to just receive 1024. You can change this, by the way, and decode it to UTF-8. Now this is basically when the hacker inputs his command, and we can just check the command and do whatever we want with it. It can be ipconfig, and we can pull up ipconfig, or it can be something else, and we can just predefine that like here. So then we're replacing the new line. The commands that are sent from the hacker always have the new line, so I'm just replacing that. Okay, so now we're checking for the hacker's input. If the input is destroyer, it's going to run the destroyer. If the input is wormy, it's going to run wormy. Now notice I actually use the string of cmd here. You don't actually have to do that because once you decode and replace this, it's already a string. So elif cd and space is in cmd. So this basically means if we want to enter a specific directory, and we couldn't do this in the previous video effectively, so I just made this. So basically what we did is we just used the command plus and then dir as well. So what this means is basically it's just going to look something like this. CD images and then dir. So why? Well, because we're sending this to our PowerShell. I think I explained this in the previous video as well. So basically what this means is we're using the subprocess module to open the PowerShell and then give it the command from here, which is this one. And then this is just the stuff that you need to leave here for it to work and to be tidy. Now right here we have the out and the ERR, which we are defining. These are variables, and then in them we're putting the proc.communicate, which basically means just put the output of the PowerShell.exe and our command into here. So if we have ipconfig is going to be output of the ipconfig is going to be here. Now in order to send this, we need to encode that. First make it a string and then encode it. In other words, I think this output right here is actually bytes already, so you don't need to turn it into a string or encode. You can just send it like that, but I'm not quite sure, and maybe there's going to be some complications, so why not just turn it into a string first. And then we're sending this through the socket, of course, to our hacker. Then we have the cmd variable again, and this time it's just going to replace the dir with nothing. And cmmd, which is going to use the cmd replace cd and a space with nothing, and we're going to just get the directory, and we're going to use that directory to os change dir cmmd, which is going to look something like this. It's going to look like images, for example, or /images image folder, something like that. Then we have the elif cmd equals stop. So if it's stop and the exclamation point, then we're just going to stop. Obviously, we can change this however you want. And if we have the schedule, we're going to call the scheduler function. I'm going to explain these functions later, don't worry. And then if it's startup, we have our startup function. It could be a function, but I just left it here, so I'm going to explain this one first. So first thing we're doing is making the variable get user profile. So this right here is not Python code. This is just used for the PowerShell to get the profile. So obviously right here we're using the proc-prof and we're giving the PowerShell this command. Now obviously we could have just used this right here instead of just manually typing it, echo this, and then we're actually taking the output and we're decoding it, and then if users and then the new line in profiles pass, elif users and then the R profile pass, and the same thing for S. So what I'm doing right here is the problem that might occur. So the problem that might occur right here, I didn't actually define this yet. This is just in the progress. So basically what happens right here is if you have a user that starts with the lowercase n, R, or S, since Windows is using the backslashes, it's gonna cause some problems. So I mean, obviously the fix would be something like remove the backslashes as I did previously up before, and then replace them with forward slashes. Now basically all you have to do is just get that environment right here. So this is C users user, I think. But then again, the problem would be that \ends would turn to /ends. So that's a bit of a weird thing. So then the lock is argv0, which is our file, basically this file. So then we have the R app data roaming Microsoft Windows start menu program startup. So we're basically going to put the same thing, as you can tell right here, copy the file, our file, this one, .py, to the startup folder. And once you do that, it's automatically going to start up on the startup. And then we're going to enter the number 1, which is the startup folder, and we're going to list there just to make sure that everything is there. And we're printing this out just to confirm. So you need these quotes right here because you want to make sure that the directories are fine. If you have spaces like right here, you're going to need the quotes at the beginning. So that's why they're here and at every one of them. And that's the env printed out. And then again, we're sending this to the PowerShell to get executed. And then we're printing out the output and sending it to the hacker. So elif cmd is your replicator. We're going to call the replicator function. I'm going to explain this later. And then right here on else, we have the proc. Basically what this says is if the command is else, for example, ipconfig, it's just going to ignore all these and go here, and basically we're just going to run it through the PowerShell. So we're going to give it to the PowerShell and print out the output and send it to the hacker, obviously. And then we have this exception, which I already explained, and these as well. And now let's explain these functions. So we have the destroy right here. Now, in order to explain the destroy, I actually have to explain the warmy first, but I'm going to explain this to you as we go. So we're going to list the directory we're currently in our file. So for k in the directories, for each file in the directories, if it ends with .py, basically if it's a Python file, we're going to pass. If it has dot inside, then we're going to pass as well, because then it's a file. And then else we're going to actually go next there equals list there and k. So for that we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go for r in the next there. In that next directory, we're going to list out all the directories, all the files in the directories, and if it ends with .py, we're going to change the directory to the specific directory that we were after, and then we're going to use OS system to run the Python program. Now obviously you can put this part right here as well here, so just do os.system python, and then there we go. So in order to run it, if it's in the directory, and then you can do the same thing there, and then you have the pass here. Then again, if it's a folder inside of a folder, we're going to print reached else, and list there again, and then run Python file again, and ignore everything else. So that's how deep it can go. So basically what this does is in your current directory, let's say that this is your current directory, if you have a subdirectories like a new map, and inside of that new map you have another new map, and inside of that another new map, there's a new Python file that you want to run. In our case, it's called works.py, which is another virus, and you want to run it, you can do that as well. This actually works great with the Wormy. Why? Well, because Wormy actually does this. He makes a bunch of maps in this directory right here, and then makes a bunch of Python files inside. So I'm going to show you how that works later, but for now, let's just leave it the way it is. So Wormy is going to replicate, and this one is going to run Wormy files. So as I said, Wormy is going to replicate. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to replace the name, the backslashes, whatever, take the argument 0, which is the name of the file. It's going to remove the backslash with slashes, and it's going to split by that and use the last name, and then they'll join the name. And then for k in range 0 to 10, we're going to try to update plus string random int 1 to 500. So random number from 1 to 500, and it's going to make a directory with the directory name. So update 75, for example. And then it's going to print copy this to that, and as I said, we're going to actually copy it with the os.system, the name to their name, and this is going to give their names, and this is going to give us the copy. And then we have the scheduler right here. So the scheduler is actually going to send the please follow the rules of entry first, because we need to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. So first we're picking the task name, no spaces or symbols or extensions. For example, fake Windows update. And then we're going to send the question to the hacker. The hacker is going to respond, and then let's take that response and then decode it with UTF-8, remove the \n as we had before, which is a problem, and then remove the not allowed symbols with this. You don't have to do this, but let's just put it there just in case. Then we have the when. So it's available from 1 a.m. to 11 a.m. because I didn't feel like changing a.m. to p.m. You can do that in the command if you want to. Put that as an option as well. The command is right here. I'm going to explain that later. And then we're doing the same thing. So the hacker is answering what time does he want, and then we have the description with symbols, spacers, or similar. Keep it short. So the description of the task scheduler task. So basically what this does, we have the also we have the path to ver, which is basically going to be our file right here, and then we're going to use this command and try to execute it. If it fails, we're going to print out the error. So what the command is basically it's taking in this command right here, and then it's going to send it to the PowerShell, and then the PowerShell, and it's going to print it out, then send it to the hacker, and it's going to say all went well, added to the scheduler. So this command basically just adds the thing to the scheduler. Now, since this is a multiple line command, it's going to actually need the semicolon to split the different commands into parts. And right here, we're filling that up, as I said, as how much AM and the description and task name. And there you go. And the path to there, of course, at the beginning. So basically, it will add it to the task scheduler. This is what it does. Now let's get to the next one. So we have the replicator right here. So what replicator does is actually pretty awesome. This is what makes this file a legitimate virus. So what it would do is it would just copy himself instead of documents, app data, local, music, pictures, app data roaming, and stuff like that. You can actually define this yourself. These are just like default things you can copy yourself to. So it's going to copy himself to that, and then it's going to use the same directories to add to the task scheduler and schedule a task to run. So hacker can modify this code to be pretty useful for him. It's a pretty good thing. So let's go through it. So first we're taking the name of the file again, and then we're getting the environment. So we're getting the user environment right here. And this is going to be, basically if you run this to PowerShell, it's going to give you C users and your username. And then 3 and 4 right here are just our variables to take in the response. And then we're decoding it, removing the backslash with slashes, and removing the new line. Then after that, we're going to do the same thing with the backslashes, but for this file plus lock. And then we're going to dir list, define the dir list right here. So which is going to be, in my case, just documents. Now you can just put these as much as you want. You can make a huge list about directories or whatever, but I'm just going to put documents because I don't want to, which would be a big problem because I would have to delete each one of them individually and then also delete the task scheduler entries. So for K, dir list for each one of them, in this case, it's just documents. We're going to make the dir name env plus K. So we're going to make our env, which is, in our case, the C users and the user, and then plus K, which is documents. And then we're going to generate some random stuff, this time not allowing the hacker to do some stuff. So for example, as you can tell right here, we're going to, for example, generate the name for the schedule, generate the description, and we're going to put them together, and time gen is going to be random. And the words gen is going to join the words gen. Now, of course, in the hacker's perspective, it would be great if the time gen is actually just a certain time. So if you want, you can just comment this out and leave this as 9, for example, or 8, as in AM. Right, so it's going to randomly choice it, and it's going to just span that a couple of times. So as I said, this is meant for a few of them running. So obviously would make, like, say 11 of them and then just randomly pick and then pick up at every hour. You can just run your listener and I'll leave it maybe an hour or two and you're definitely going to get a shell. Or you can just specify it at 9 a.m. and then every day at 9 a.m. just run your listener and get a shell at 9 a.m. Okay, so we're going to join the words generator from before right here. We're going to join them all together because they are actually on this right now. And then we're going to add the win at the beginning, because that just looks more legit. And then for the description, we're going to say Windows and then something random service. So because again, it looks more legit. And then we're going to replace the spaces. And then we're going to make this a string. Because it has to be a string, it's going to go inside of another string. And then now we're doing our try. And if it fails, we're just going to print out the error again. As I said, you also print out done because why not? You can also send this to your hacker if you want to with SOC, because you kind of want to know if it's done, you know, and you for sure want to know if you have an error. So yeah, you would want to remove every print from this code. I'm just leaving this for the sake of demonstration. Anyway, so now we're running the function, copy this to that for our PowerShell, in this case, this file plus log and the dir name. As you remember from before, this file plus lock is this one, which basically means our file right here for the Python file. And then we have the where do you want to copy it. In our case, we want to copy it to the dir name, which is going to be our user environment plus K, which is documents or app data local or music or pictures or app data roaming. For none of this, by the way, for any of these functions that I put here, you don't need administrative rights. I haven't needed them so far, so you're probably not going to need them either. So then we have the same thing. We're taking the response into variables, and then we're using that to decode, and then we're copying outputs, and then what we're going to copy. And then we have the file name equals arg0.split backslashes. So this is just another thing that we want to do because we already modified the first thing up there. I guess I could have done this part smarter, but you know, whatever. So, and then the file name equals file name and -1. We're going to do that, and program lock equals dir name plus file name. So this is basically going to mean we're going to take our dir name from before, which is going to be C users user, and then let's say documents. So it's going to be C users user documents, and then plus the file name, which is going to be whatever the file name is. It's actually, in my case, works v10.py, as you can see up there. And then the command is going to basically execute this. It's going to add it to the task scheduler, the same command as before, and it's going to add these descriptions and stuff like that, and it's going to format it out nicely. So then we have that, and once this command has executed, we want to obviously just leave it out. So basically leave the response to the hacker and then leave it out. So now, as I said right here, you can just, I'll copy this code to my website. You can just copy it if you want. If you have anything that you don't understand, just let me know in the comments. So basically I'm just repeating things over and over again. So that's why I don't want to go deeper. So let's save this. And let's actually run this. I'm actually going to use the PowerShell because that's nicer for me. So Python and works stand.py, and we're going to run this, and as you can tell, it's going to say attempting connection to the hacker, and it's going to retry many times. And then we're going to run our netcat, and we're going to run netcat64, and we're going to listen to the port 4444. Now this would be the hacker, and this would be the victim. So the victim wouldn't see this, obviously, and then it would say hooking onto the IP. Now, obviously, we'd pop this out. You don't want to see this, because if the victim sees this, they have your IP. Anyways, so it hooked onto it, and the hacker got the shell. It says shell on, as I said before. So now we can test a lot of things. So first thing that I want to test, actually use the scheduler command or whatever, because I think the scheduler command is pretty cool. Now we can also use wormy to self-replicate. We can also use the destroyer to run all the self-replicated files. Or we could just use the scheduler to add the test scheduler custom things, just one entry, or we can use multiple entries, but in this case it's just one entry because it's documents. The replicator, which will actually add the file to the documents and add it to the scheduler. So let's use the replicator because it's scheduler at the same time as the replicator. So replicator and the exclamation point. And there you have it. It says shell on. We have the shell back, and we can do ipconfig if we want and get the ipconfig. And right here it says done. So does this mean we have the test scheduler set up? Yes, it does. And let me show you how. So press the Windows key, write task, and there is the task scheduler. So enter it. And if we take a look at the test scheduler library right here, we're actually going to notice that we have WinYZPE. If we modify it, you can actually take a look that it says Windows OLN service, and it actually says, let's take a look at the action. It actually says PowerShell.exe, my username, and C users my username, and the document works v10.py. So we'll actually run this. And that's pretty much everything. You can actually run as much commands as you want right here. You can actually get the firewall information as well. Let me just open the options. So you can also use curl, you can use wget. These are just replaced as in invoke requests in Windows. You can use naturefile to show profiles, to show wireless profiles. You can start the YouTube video like this or a website with the default browser. dir, ftype, make dir, whatever you want, I don't know. These are just in the PowerShell already. You can also do the new item and the path and the new text file, item type file, or exe or whatever, or txt to make a new file. So you can also do that. You can also do natch firewall show state and natch firewall show config. You can show these without administrator privileges, but right here is where it gets cut off. So this command right here. And you can also see some, you can obviously see some firewall rules with this. It's pretty useful. Now I'm also thinking about adding the download option and set as a wallpaper. And then this is just basically me saying I added the schedule. And then these are some functions that we can use. So as I displayed, the scheduler works, it schedules the task. And also, yeah, I wanted to show that it's in documents, so let's take a look right here. As you can tell, it's here. As a matter of fact, more of them are here because I tested this before. I can actually just remove all of them because I have removed the task scheduler rule. So that's it. We can also try some commands like netstat -an. And we're going to get the netstat or whatever. And yeah, I know that this looks ugly, but I'm sorry, it has to be in the bytes format. Now you can always save this to a text file and then decode it or something, but since I'm as a hacker connecting to this from the netcat, I can't do that, so I have to take the output like this. So the smart way would actually be to make a Python file maybe out of it and then just use that as the listener. So that would be a great thing. So as for the start, I think it's a great thing. The first video that I made and this one right now, it's definitely an improvement to the program. So I don't know, just keep up. If you are interested in some more of these tutorials, I can actually just dig through and then add some functionalities that you want. Leave them down in comments and I'll do it. So there it is. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.